If you could reach into your own head right now and pull out a piece of your brain the size of a tennis ball, you would match the exact cranial capacity of your ancestors. Over the last 10,000 years, a period that represents a mere fraction of a millimeter on the football field of evolutionary time, human beings have undergone a radical, silent physical overhaul. We are raised on a comforting myth. We are told that evolution is a slow, majestic process that takes millions of years, and that the moment we built houses, grew crops, and laid down roads, we somehow stepped outside of nature. We assume our bodies are the same rugged vessels that hunted mammoths in the dirt, just dressed up in suits and sitting in office chairs. But the bones tell a completely different story. Anthropologists measuring thousands of historical skulls across the globe have documented an unsettling phenomenon known as de-encephalization. Since the dawn of the agricultural revolution, the individual human brain has shrunk by roughly 10 to 15%. That is a loss of about 150 cubic centimeters of gray matter. Half a cup of raw cognitive processing hardware has simply vanished from inside your skull. Look around at the modern world, at our absolute dependency on the infrastructure around us, and ask yourself honestly in the comments, do you think civilization is actually making us more intelligent? Or are we just riding the wave of a collective genius we do not personally possess? To understand why your brain shrank, you have to understand what you used to be. Before the first seed was intentionally planted in the earth, a single human being was a walking Swiss Army knife. To survive as a hunter-gatherer, your mind had to be an incredibly versatile, heavy-duty engine. You had to memorize thousands of plant species, read the subtle architecture of weather patterns, track dangerous predators across shifting landscapes, manufacture your own weapons, and navigate the volatile, lethal politics of a small nomadic tribe. A single cognitive error meant immediate death. Your brain was a massive, resource-hungry supercomputer, burning 20% of your daily caloric energy just to keep you alive in the wild. Then, 10,000 years ago, we made a pact with the land. We settled down, we built the farm, and with the farm came the division of labor. Suddenly, you no longer needed to know how to survive a winter alone in the woods. You did not need to know how to forge a tool, identify a poison, and track a deer all at once. You just needed to know how to bake bread, or forge iron, or guard a wall. The community became a safety net, an invisible biological blanket that shielded the individual from the harsh, unforgiving selective pressures of the wilderness. For the first time in human history, you could be suboptimal, fragile, or specialized and still pass your genes on to the next generation. The individual brain was permitted to downsize because we invented something entirely new: collective intelligence. We created a human cloud. We began outsourcing our memories to clay tablets, then to paper books, then to digital servers. We pooled our cognitive labor. But our brains were not the only things that softened when we left the wild. When scientists extracted the DNA from over 16,000 ancient skeletons, they discovered that the transition from foraging to farming did not slow our evolution down. It threw it into a violent hyperdrive. By crowding together into dense, early cities, we accidentally turned our settlements into massive evolutionary petri dishes. We were suddenly living knee-deep in livestock waste and contaminated water. We were exposed to crowd diseases that our ancestors had never encountered: smallpox, tuberculosis, and malaria. Evolution suddenly stopped caring about how fast you could run or how heavy a stone you could lift. It turned its brutal focus entirely onto your bloodstream and your immune system. Sweeps of genetic mutations rushed through human populations, rapidly altering our blood types, rewriting our metabolic traits, and bleaching our skin tones to absorb vitamin D in cloudy northern climates. At the same time, our skeletal frames began a process called gracilization. Our bones became thinner, lighter, and far less dense than the robust, thick structures of our Ice Age ancestors. Our bodies were literally adapting to a life of repetitive, low-impact agricultural labor, shedding the heavy, energy-expensive muscle and bone mass that was no longer required to survive. We even broke the ancient laws of mammalian biology. Throughout history, every mammal lost the ability to digest milk after infancy. But over the last few millennia, a rapid mutation known as lactase persistence swept through farming communities, turning an evolutionary anomaly into a normal adult trait, simply because those who could drink the milk of domesticated cattle managed to survive the famines that wiped out everyone else. And then there is the quiet misery currently sitting in the back of your mouth. Your wisdom teeth are a direct, painful reminder of this recent evolutionary whiplash. It is a concept called masticatory gracilization. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors chewed raw, fibrous wild tubers and tough, uncooked meat. This intense mechanical pressure forced the human jaw to grow wide, muscular, and deep, leaving plenty of room for a third set of molars to emerge naturally. But the moment we began boiling grains into soft stews and baking processed flour, the mechanical stress on our faces vanished. Our jaws began to shrink, growing smaller and more delicate with each passing generation. But human genetics are a chaotic, multi-layered blueprint. While our jawbones shrank rapidly in response to our diet, the genetic code dictating the size and number of our teeth did not change at the same pace. The result is a biological traffic jam inside your face. A set of ancient, heavy-duty teeth trying to force their way into a small, fragile, modern jaw that no longer has room to hold them. Imagine an ancient ancestor looking at us today. They would probably ask,
"Why is it so soft?"
I really do not know.
because the machine carries us now. If you want to continue uncovering the unsettling biological truths hidden beneath the surface of modern life, take a moment to subscribe. We are only just beginning to map the architecture of our own cage. When you look across the animal kingdom, there is a universal, unyielding biological law. When a wild species is brought into a sanctuary or a farm, its body changes in a highly predictable way. A wild boar has a thick skull, massive tusks, and a highly alert, aggressive brain. Put it in a pen for a few generations, and it turns into a farm pig. Its bones thin out, its snout shortens, its coat changes color, and its brain size plummets. The same thing happens when a wolf becomes a dog, or when a wild sheep is domesticated for its wool. This is the self-domestication theory. Human beings did not just domesticate plants and animals. By clearing the forests, building high walls, enacting rigid legal systems, and punishing aggressive individuals within our tribes, we built a massive global farm. And then, we walked inside and locked the door behind us. Some researchers have suggested that this pattern mirrors the evolutionary trajectory of social insects, like ants. In a massive colony, no single ant needs a large brain because the intelligence is distributed across the entire system. The colony itself becomes the organism, and the individual components are allowed to become smaller, simpler, and completely dependent on the whole. While anthropologists are still actively debating the exact timeline and causes of our shrinking skulls, the broader pattern remains terrifyingly clear. We have traded individual autonomy for collective security. This realization exposes the deepest, most uncomfortable paradox of modern human existence. We often look at our modern anxieties, our chronic stress, our physical fragility, and our deep, haunting sense of individual helplessness as personal flaws. We look into the mirror and feel a distinct shame that we are not stronger, that we cannot survive on our own, that a simple power outage or a broken supply chain can throw our entire lives into a state of mortal panic. But this research reveals that your fragility is not a malfunction. It is a design feature. Over the last 10,000 years, nature has systematically stripped away the rugged, self-reliant independence of the individual human animal. It has molded your body and your mind to be a specialized, hyper-dependent cell within a massive, collective superorganism. You are safe from the wolves, you are warm in your bed, and you have access to the accumulated knowledge of 1 billion minds floating in the digital cloud. But the biological tax for that safety was your completeness. We are a species caught in a profound existential limbo. We carry the residual instincts of a wild generalist, trapped inside the thinned bones, crowded jaws, and downsized brains of a self-domesticated creature. You feel small, anxious, and deeply vulnerable because, biologically speaking, you were engineered to never be whole on your own again.